Welcome to I'll Be There For You, the podcast that helps couples with their wedding photography planning with me, William of William Adwin Photography. I have photographed several hundred weddings throughout the years, and I wanted to bring all of that experience to you. So take a listen, make sure to follow, and thank you for stopping by.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. And today I am joined by Marc Uravic, wedding planner and event planner. And I'm going to let him take it away and describe what he does and his backstory. And then we'll get into a Q&A.
Thank you so much for having me today, Bill. It's a pleasure to talk to you and your listeners. My name's Marc Uravic. I am what I call an event designer and offer event management services, which is anything to do with a celebration, a party, a special event of any kind. I kind of help clients navigate through the terrain of conceptualizing, planning, creating, and executing their dream events.
All right, excellent, fantastic. A better description than I had because, that's why you do what you do. So thank you for that. And so I'm going to just go over some kind of overall questions that we discussed, and I think this will give a nice variety and perspective for people listening to understand, what Marc does, what a event planner designer does, and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that you have. So now that you're engaged, what should you do first? What should be the first thing couples are doing?
Well, I might say something a little controversial here, but the first thing you do is not go buy a dress or shopping for a dress or thinking about the pretty flowers you want to have at your wedding. The first thing you need to do as a couple and as a partnership is communicate like you've never communicated before. You need to start talking about what your dreams, goals, and expectations are for this celebration surrounding what is essentially a civic administrative act, maybe a religious component, but anything outside the license and whatever your municipality requires to make that all legal is a luxury. And in other words, anything outside of that is something you do not have to get married. You do not have to have a white dress. You don't have to wear a tuxedo. You don't have to serve filet. You don't have to have one single flower. You do not have to have any music. You don't have to have it documented, although that could be sacrilege on this particular podcast to say that.
Maybe someone can take pictures.
Maybe someone can take pictures.
But you're right.
And so I have like a little axe to grind about everybody referring to weddings as luxury weddings. Every wedding is a luxury wedding. There is no wedding that's outside of visit to City Hall and the wedding license registrar's office that doesn't become a luxury. And you need to, as a partnership and as a couple, start communicating so that you can start making decisions about exactly what extra you want to do to make your wedding celebration unique, memorable, reflect you, include your loved ones, fit into a budget, and you should have that conversation just between the two of you, not involving parents at the beginning, not involving your best friends, not involving any dubious information, including mine, that you get on the internet. And one place I like to recommend that clients always start with a written fantasy guest list. And I say fantasy, it's just if you ever considered inviting someone to your wedding, put them on a written list. Don't just tabulate them in your mind, put them on a written list. Compare whatever overlap you have with your partner and start to get an idea of how many people you're considering including and what the demographic of that particular group of people is. Those things will drive all of your decision making. If you don't know how many people you are anticipating having, you can't select a venue of an appropriate size. If you don't have an idea of how many out-of-towners you're going to need, you can't negotiate a room block. If you don't know how many singles you have, you can't devise a policy regarding guests versus no guests. So put everybody on a written list. You don't have to start hunting addresses at the time, but like the name, don't go to the end guest yet. Just put the names of anybody you would want to invite. Then review with your partner, is Bill married? Does Bill have a significant other? Do I need to include his significant other? Do I need to include a guest for Bill? Do I need to keep a tabulation of my end guests so that I can see where that fits in with my overall count? You start asking these questions of each other, and then the next step is communicating with each other to determine how broad you're going to open this circle. Is it going to be to both sets of parents? Is it going to include, your best friends, best man, maid of honor, any kind of people like that? And the rules, the parameters of which you're going to loop them into your process. Everybody will have an opinion. Nobody's opinion counts except the person that's paying the bill. If that is you, then your opinion's the only one that counts. If that is your parents, you have to discuss amongst yourself what kind of compromise you're willing to make with the people that are going to be financing this endeavor. And you should have that conversation and be on the same page as a couple so that you are a united unit before you branch out to any of this. It cuts down the drama. It cuts down any hurt feelings because you let someone cycle through their own, I don't want to say agenda as a negative connotation, but they cycle through their own wants and desires for the event for too long.
Sure, yeah.
And it's so much harder to nip something like that into the bud rather than to just go to your parents and say, hey, mom and dad, we're getting married. We would like a non-sectarian, non-denominational ceremony on a cliff by some body of water, 100 miles from nowhere, and we want to only include 20 people.
That sounds perfect.
That may be perfect for you.
Yeah.
Your parents might be like, what about your aunt? What about, who makes this 20 guest list? They're going to have opinions.
Sure.
They're going to want to know. They're going to be excited for you. And you have to start deciding what lines in the sand you're not going to cross before you start just walking in the sand.
Yeah, makes sense.
And every decision at this phase, everything is a fantasy. You can dream about your ceremony in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, packed with every rare kind of flowering plant, flower, ormolu this and candelabra that, to your heart's content. All of that is doable. Anything is doable with enough time, space, and money. You need to then start assessing what time do you have, what space do you have, and money, which is more than just money, it's resources. How much of a budget do you have? How much of your own time can you afford personally and professionally to devote to the process of planning this event? How much of your emotional resources do you have dealing with drama? This might be where you decide to hop on a plane and go to the little chapel in Vegas and do this completely outside of any of those other things. Because believe me, planning a party after you get back from Vegas is much less high stress than planning a quote-unquote wedding. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. And where do you start with the planning process? You've kind of gone into that already, but just kind of looking at some of like the guidelines we have, what should you do first? And then where do you start with the planning process? Do you want to expand on that a little more?
Absolutely. You kind of have to have at least a ballpark of the size, the number of people, before you can do anything. And then nothing can become real until you have a date for this event. And the date never becomes real until you've secured a venue.
Do you feel like sometimes the date dictates the number of people that could be there, or vice versa, depending on the venue availability?
Anything can affect anything. I mean, like, every situation is unique, and the time of year can affect whether your closest will travel That's one of the reasons you need the written list, so that you can start making predictions about your demographic. My Aunt Mary will not fly up from Florida in January
Sure.
to the Northeast.
Yeah.
So I can invite her, she'll send a lovely gift, but there's no way she's going to attend, kind of thing. Or I want a destination wedding in the Caribbean, and the finances of my guests attending that are going to knock such percentage off of my guest list. Or I don't want to have a religious ceremony, and there are elements in my family that will boycott my wedding because I'm not getting married in a house of worship of their approval. And you learn all of this by assessing the demographics of the guest list you put together. And that information that you've gathered is what fuels your research on venues. You don't want to find the perfect venue for you to find out it'll only hold half your guest count.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there are all these parameters to think about. So, like you said, you're kind of creating this demographic in the beginning and working from there. That's your foundation.
That is your guest list is the foundation of everything. The numbers dictate, costs on just about everything. I mean, not just about everything. The more people you have doesn't necessarily drive up certain costs, but Bill, who is a very talented and dedicated photographer, cannot single-handedly cover a wedding of 500 people.
That's true. I can't.
It's no aspersion on him, but he needs a crew and a team to cover that number of people. If you start adding multiple locations, he needs to have more than himself, because he can't twitch his nose and show up from bridal prep to groom prep in, a Samantha from Bewitched 2 seconds.
Yeah, as much as I try, I just can't pull off a Samantha.
So, your numbers drive all of your volume of guests drive all of your decisions. And once you start making decisions, things get locked in, you start spending money, and it can be inefficient and a waste of money if you have to backtrack and try to customize things post-contract signing rather than just picking the right team member at the beginning and hiring the right venue. And you can't really hire anybody else until you've picked a venue.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, we're in the city, so if you were hearing some horns honking, that's just the natural ambiance of the city of brotherly love that I love so much. You were talking about how it doesn't matter who the photographer is, and I figured I'd mention this since it's a photography planning podcast as well, but just planning weddings in general. Do you feel that, assuming it's a good seasoned photographer, do you feel like there's a certain guest count where it's appropriate to have a second photographer, a third photographer? Do you have a formula, or is it kind of dependent on other things?
I sort of have a formula. Everything is dependent on what the client, the couple, want out of the work product they want out of this experience, with every vendor, but with a photographer. I would be confident having Bill Solo photograph a wedding of 50 or less that did not involve multiple locations, bridal prep, groom prep, couple, separate couple preps.
Sure.
He can't be in 2 places at once. If you're in a defined space that he can cover 50 people by himself.
Sure.
Much more than 50 people, he starts to run into things are going to get missed.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's up to you. There are clients that, and Bill might kill me for saying this, there are clients that want nothing out of their wedding photography than a gorgeous portrait of the two of them to put in a frame on their piano.
Yeah,
or
and
whatever,
that's okay.
mantle or whatever. And that picture can be obtained from any number of people. People that want a documentation of the day that reflects the emotions, the history, the stories that developed, the interpersonal interactions that happened that day. You need more than one person. You need, I'm not a photographer, so I might have this biz jargon wrong, but you need a shooter for the action and you need a shooter for the reaction.
Yeah, no, that's actually how I explain it a lot. When I won't shoot a wedding without a second photographer. And not just because of the size of a wedding, but also just because it's basically an insurance policy. I am a human being. I could still break my ankle or something like that. I'd probably hobble around and keep shooting, but there needs to be someone else there that could take over if needed. But to your point, I always instruct my second photographer to get reactions. I call them crowd responses. I also do that, but it's important for me to focus on what I call the main show. So if a couple is having their first dance, if there's a speech, a toast, the vows, whatever the case might be, that's my primary area of focus. And my second photographer is getting parents reacting, people laughing, a tear being wiped. I do both, but my primary focus is to get the main show. So that tells more of a story, like you're saying. There's the action and the reactions.
Well, I have a news flash for all of our listeners out there. Weddings are a one-day event that everything is disposable, and the only thing that you retain at the end is some dirty attire that needs to be
Yes.
processed somehow. Your photography and your videography are the only work product that you get to keep.
Yeah,
the
amen.
flowers are in the trash, the food has been consumed, the music has been listened to and has drifted off into the ether. The venue is now hosting someone else's wedding. The only thing you get to keep are your only tangibles are your photography and your videography. And the whole reason you're doing this is to create a human interaction with your nearest and dearest, and to create memories that you can further connect with them as years, the whole life.
Yeah.
You have children, and this is a catalyst for memories, sharing experiences. And photography and videography spark those human interactions later on. It may be you sitting down with your child on the eve of them getting married and going over this work product from when you got married, and it brings it all back. And here's a secret. This is why everybody in this industry works in this industry. None of us work in this industry to get rich. We work in this industry to have an impact on the personal lives of people around us.
I very much agree, and beautifully said. So let's move on to some more specific parts of kind of the planning of the day. Let's talk about food and beverage service.
In most cases, this is where the bulk of your money is going to go. And feeding people is expensive. Catering is, I when I was a catering salesperson, my motto was, I schlep, therefore I live.
Yes.
Everything is a schlep. You
taught me the word schlep.
Yes.
It's a fantastic word.
You have
for those
to,
of us.
Oh, sorry.
For people that don't know, can you define schlep?
Schlep is a word for a laborious movement of something from one place to the other.
Yes.
And it particularly applies to food. Your caterer has to schlep things from the produce vendor, the meat vendor, the fish vendor. It has to be prepped. It has to then be schlepped to the refrigeration to hold it until transport. It then has to be loaded on a vehicle, properly transported. It has to be unloaded. It has to then, go through your event, and then all of that has to be cleaned up, taken back to their, home base, and schlepped off the truck again, and everything needs to be schlepped back into its home.
The word sounds like what it is. It's a perfect word.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It is a perfect word, and everybody in this industry schleps.
Yes.
Your florist schleps, your photographers schlep, your videographers schlep, your band schleps, your DJ schleps, your event planner schleps, your stationer schleps. Everybody schleps in this business. And it's one of the reasons why things can be perceived to be very expensive. There is no digital app that does the work of all of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all human beings, and it's all human beings that cannot be replaced yet. I mean,
Yet.
maybe AI will be able to GoPro, photograph your wedding at some point. I don't see how that will ever happen, but I guess it could happen.
Yeah. Well, this is another yet, but even if an AI, a robot, could photograph your wedding beautifully, it's not going to have much personality yet. Maybe, a few many years down the road. But just making that personal connection is tremendously important for anyone schlepping,
Yes.
and especially for you. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like above and beyond everything you're doing, just who you are, how you are, and the experience that you provide for your couples, and how important that is.
We have a very dear shared client in order, and I believe she can be quoted as saying, "I will burn the place down to get my client what they want."
Yes.
And it sounds very arrogant and harsh, but I believe that that's probably true. I get great personal satisfaction of watching my clients' dreams become reality.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I, as a planner, I don't work for anybody else on the team except for my client. In certain cases, I work for the person paying me, which might be the parents of the bride and groom, and ultimately I do have to honor the wishes of the person, funding my existence. But I try desperately to give them, to realize the vision that they have, to make it personal, to make it their story, to cross-pollinate every single thing I can, from the food that is served, to the decor, to the ambiance that's created, to facilitating your human interactions with your nearest and dearest, whether it's through your content on your wedding website or the invitation and the responses back and forth to your invitation. They're all things designed to create and enhance human interactions.
That's a perfect segue into, you kind of just listed some of these things, and let's go a little more in depth. One of the things you're talking about is like ambiance, and part of ambiance and the experience is the music and the entertainment. Can you expand a bit on music and entertainment?
Yes. Human beings have been partying since their inception. That has changed and morphed and evolved through the whole course of human existence. We're currently in a phase where music and dancing and things are the primary source of entertainment. There have been times where poetry readings were, or any number of things. And the music on your playlist tells the story about you, your relationship, your history, and how you two, as a couple, interact with this new group of people that you've brought together. Becomes a whole different group of people. You take people from different segments of your life, and one of the two most intense pieces of connective tissue are the food you put in your mouth, I guess the drink you also consume, but the food and drink you consume, and the music and your reaction and your guest's reaction to the music that happens in that space.
Yeah.
And then all of that is also facilitated by the overall ambiance that you create by, you're important to me. We've prepared a place that's lovely, that's comfortable for you, which is where I call it ambiance. Some people call it decor. And there's a million ways to skin that cat to fit every budget, every aesthetic, every value system. You just have to be willing to delve in and find those interpersonal connections and things that enhance interpersonal connections, while bearing at the top of your mind that things need to be detailed, but every detail is not for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, certainly. I like how you describe that the music, the entertainment is like an extension of the couple, who they are, what they are, their personality and character, and all of that. More specifically into like, what are some of the types of vendors that provide that? You have bands, DJs, you have individual instrumentalists, quartets. Can you talk about the variety there?
There is a massive variety. We live in a wonderful age of digital technology, and your personal digital sources can be repurposed to create a musical playlist, so to speak, for your wedding. I'm not saying I recommend that, because you're making decisions about a group of people that are not in the room with you on a day of circumstances that are not there. So I'm certainly not advocating that we eliminate the human element, but you can. And that is a good exercise to do anyway, because if you share that with whoever you ended up putting on your team to handle your entertainment, that gives them great insight into how all of this works and the personal nature of all of this.
Would you say a playlist is maybe more of a general foundation that can be adjusted depending on the party? It's not a list of
instructions.
Yeah.
It should not be a list of instructions,
Sure.
at least at the initial phase. But, live music is amazing. It is human beings interacting with human beings, and I think it's part of the core of human existence. It has always happened. People have sung, danced, played rock sticks, developed the whole panoply of musical instruments and digital technology that we have. It's like ingrained in our very souls, and it's what makes a party. You've taken time out of work, you've taken time out of just the toil of existing to celebrate this occasion, and you celebrate it by doing something joyous.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, how do you have a party without music? Without some kind of entertainment? I guess you
can.
Is it still a party? Question mark.
Yes, it's still a party. This is part of the process that in every region of the country, and probably every country in the world and every region in those countries, there are typical weddings. Mm-hmm. Every culture has celebrations surrounding the unions of two people. They are different across the board. They have all evolved over the millennial that humans have been occupying the earth. And you don't have to follow any rule except your own to do this. Point. And if your idea of fun is playing yard games after a casual ceremony by a body of water, and then having some amazing food, and then hanging out and just reminiscing and interacting on a personal level, that is entertainment. That is perfectly valid. Do I think it could be enhanced by music? Yes, but is it necessary? That's a reflection of your personality.
Sure.
You can have any kind of party that you would attend could be a wedding. Any kind of celebration you attend could be a wedding.
Speaking of personality, I've noticed 2 times you mentioned being near a body of water. Is that part of you coming out? Is that your ideal? Do you enjoy being near a body of water, whether it's for a celebration or just otherwise?
I'm a Pisces, so yes, I do personally enjoy being near a body of water.
You kept sliding in near a body of water.
But that seems to be a thing that heads up lots of people's dream lists for their wedding venues. Not always practical.
Sure.
Depends on what the body of water is. A non-spring-fed pond could be a haven of bugs that will torture your guests.
Well, this is a great subsection, the pros and cons of a body of water.
This is also a great segue into the whole process of planning your event, is a process of evaluating the pros and cons of every single thing.
Sure, yeah.
And what I consider a pro, Bill could consider a con, and there could be a particular circumstance where something is a pro for me, but another circumstance for that same thing becomes a con.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Part of this communication that I referred to at the beginning of you as a couple is making a pro and con list for every decision you're going to make, and seeing where you match, seeing where you diverge, seeing what compromises can be made to enhance a pro, mitigate a con, change a con to a pro, change a pro in a way that it becomes a con, and realizing it before it's your wedding day and you've committed to something that you thought was going to be amazing that turns out to be not. And
yeah, I think that's a very realistic way to approach things, because everything could have some kind of con to it.
Everything.
Yeah.
And everything probably can have a pro. There's probably a circumstance where everything has a pro and everything has a con. And I'm going to do the shameless plug for why you should hire a professional event planner.
Yes, please do.
The learning curve on figuring that out with someone that has been doing this for years, in my case over 30, is much faster than you doing your internet research, you going to visit lovely vendors who are trying to sell you their product or service. So they won't know what your cons are. I'm not saying they're trying to deceive you, but they're trying to present themselves as the best thing forward to earn your business. And part of your job working with them is to communicate, because they cannot provide what you didn't indicate that you needed.
Yeah,
Everyone,
certainly.
photography, videography, your florist, your caterer, your band, your hairstylist, your stationer, everybody needs to communicate about, and understand what the goals. And part of your job as the planner, whether it's a professional or a neophyte couple trying to do this, is you're the leader of the team. Entertaining is a verb. It is an active process that you are engaged in.
Yeah.
And you need to participate in that. You need to drive it forward. You need to understand how all of these elements interconnect.
Yeah, and speaking about how important a planner is, and what I would call a real planner, not to dismiss other subsections or coordinators or things like that, I think this is a good time to kind of explain so couples know what is a planner, what is a coordinator, because I think when people aren't aware, they tend to group all of these people together. They group a planner together with a day of coordinator or an event coordinator. And just for clarity, can you kind of describe what encompasses different titles?
So I would say a planner is somebody that leads the team, that every member of the team that puts together your special event, whether that's a week-long series of, parties, celebrations, intimate things, the ceremony, the big party, the brunch afterwards. All of those elements are connected. All of them you need to know what's going on in every other thing during that time so that you can maximize the best experience for you and your guests. A coordinator is somebody that can line up your bridesmaids and your groomsmen, your parents or whatever, in the correct order that you've given them. Like, if there's a mistake on the information you've given them, they're not in any position to correct it.
Sure.
Line them up and send them down an aisle and make sure your cake got delivered at 2:00 because you said. But really, at that point, the only thing they can do is call the cake baker. They can't really do anything else to fix it except find out why the cake baker didn't deliver at 2:00.
Yeah,
and then they're going to come bother you with the answer to that because they're not involved enough to fix it themselves.
And you've talked to me about this before, and you talk about how a coordinator can only coordinate what was done before they arrived, whether they arrive 30 days out or if someone's a quote-unquote day of coordinator. And you could also talk about how that's a bit of a...
well, there is really no such thing as a day of coordinator.
Exactly.
A day of coordinator is somebody that got paid, and if the party was a success, it would have been a success without them. And if it's a failure, it's not necessarily their fault, but they weren't in a position to correct it.
It's kind of like a chef going in for dinner service, and they can only do what the kitchen prepared themselves for.
Correct.
But if a chef walks in and there's no staff and there's no food prepared, the best chef can't run a dinner service.
Correct.
Okay.
They can't.
And that's good for, I think, the general public to know, because couples might be thinking, oh, well, a day of coordinator, it's more affordable and it only costs X, but
it's a waste of money.
Yeah, and Mark is very correct about that. Yep.
In every circumstance. There are plenty of times that there was a day of coordinator, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Maybe the one value they added is gathering your cards and gifts and making sure they ended up in the right place and you didn't have to be bothered with that.
Or if it's just made clear that this is not a planner. They are only going to coordinate what you have done before they arrived, and they can only work with the hand they were dealt.
Correct. And the vendors, the team members that you have hired, will not view them as being in charge. Anytime there is a problem, they're going to have to come bother you anyway.
Sure.
And it's just a waste of money in almost every circumstance. There are plenty of circumstances that it worked out great, but that's because you did a good job planning the party and things went as they were planned. And there are probably legit stories of a day of coordinator whipping out the needle and thread to fix a broken strap on a bridesmaid's dress or something like that. But in the end, Grandma could have whipped out her sewing kit from her purse and done the same thing.
Oh, yeah, and none of this is to dismiss someone if they were ever a day of coordinator. It's just to let couples know what is a day of coordinator, what can they even possibly do as compared to someone that is a full-service designer planner like you.
A full-service designer and planner can Make sure you're putting your resources, whether they're financial or your time, your creativity, your mental health, in dealing with any of the drama that might surround this, and coordinating all of the aspects. I frequently, in my professional life, I always ask my clients to identify, like out of the three-legged stool, ambiance, food, or entertainment, music, what is the most important to you?
Oh, I like that.
They're all important. The stool does not stand with all three legs.
Sure.
You need all three of them, basically, but which one is the most important to you? I'm not saying that to advocate that that's where the most resources should be spent, but that is the decision that you absolutely must get right.
And in terms of ambiance, you've got rentals, you've got lighting, florals, linens, and all of these things.
Props.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about, I guess it would go back to your ultimate vision, and does everyone need furniture? Can they just have florals? What's the advice for creating the ambiance?
Knowing that you're creating ambiance, not fulfilling a checklist of I must have centerpieces, check. I must have ceremony designated decor of some kind, check. I must have, any of that stuff.
And speaking of centerpieces, I think this is something that couples don't always think about. Can you talk about different kinds of centerpieces, how some are lower, some are taller, and the pros and cons of having different design elements, and how that relates to people conversing and socializing?
Sure. I'll say your elements of decor have to function on three different planes. They have to function of what kind of tone and mood does it inspire when you first encounter the overall space. That's the first thing, the first impression, so to speak.
Sure.
And that is a broad brush painted overall vision. It's like what your eye catches and what that makes you feel in the first 10 seconds of encountering the space. Then the next level is what you encounter in your more personal space, whether that's your table or across the bar, and the spaces that you are more intimately connected to, because you're touching things, you're 5 feet away from something, that level. And then the third level is, how does this exist while you're in the midst of this party?
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it.
And they all are composed of big items, little items, medium items, details, and a professional planner helps you assemble that puzzle in a way that all three of those elements work to further your goals for the event. And the goal should always be making your guests feel special and elucidating your personality, giving a kind of feeling for your event. And there's so many different ways to achieve all of those goals based on you. And it's best if you approach it as an overall design that the music contributes to, the food service contributes to, the venue, contributes to, the weather outside contributes to, did you have trouble parking to get in, or did you have to schlep up a hill?
There it is.
Kind of thing. The schlep word, guests even have to schlep.
In terms of weather, I'm glad you brought up weather, because I think an important thing to think about is, of course, people are always thinking, hopefully they're thinking, I need a rain plan. But I think what people overlook is wind as well. Can you talk about rain?
Definitely.
And even if it's a clear sunny day, but how wind can affect outdoor plans?
Well, Bill and I are currently in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, which means we're near the eastern seaboard coastline.
Near a body of water.
Near a body of water again.
Yes.
And many couples around this region have visions of waterside ceremonies, parties, celebrations, and in their mind's eye, they envision it in the ultimate fairy tale gown, the tuxedo, the stiletto heels, the patent leather shoes, the whatever. And they're like, I go to the beach all the time and it's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, when you're at the beach in your bathing suit and the wind's whipping around and you're being exfoliated by all the micrograins of sand that are whipping around, and your hair is stringy and salty and, whipping all around, and you're in a bathing suit, you do not have a train, you do not have a skirt, you do not have a veil, you're not dying in a black tuxedo, your stilettos are not, you're not wearing stilettos, so you're not sinking down into the sand, impossible to walk. And in many times in those circumstances, even with a professional audio support team, the wind whips your words away, and the guests that have assembled to share this moment with you can't hear it because the wind takes it out to sea. And you wore your hair down in beach waves because you're getting married on a beach, and your groom can't see your face because your hair's whipping in your face, and you're about to take off like a parasail with your veil.
Some of this is poetry, Mark.
Yes.
You talked about exfoliation with the sand and the parasail of the hair. Beautiful choice of words. And speaking of hair, can you also talk about, whether there's wind or not, can you talk about how styling of hair affects visibility for guests, for you, and of course for photo and video?
Okay, this is an unexpected question. I didn't really prepare for this, but
but I'm going to answer. I just thought of it because you started talking about hair and parasail, and that made me think of a very large tendril.
Yes, everybody wants to look their best on the day that they've gone to all of this effort. Everyone wants to look their best, but everyone should always bear in mind that they should still look like themselves and be recognizable as themselves to their nearest and dearest. I'm going to use Elizabeth Taylor as an example. Elizabeth Taylor is a phenomenal beauty that can wear elaborate hairdos with accessories and jewels and everything, and she still looks like her in everything.
Yeah.
There are people that could do the same hairdo and look fake as fake can be.
Sure, yeah.
There are, so you should always look like yourself when you do this. The best version of yourself, but you should look like yourself. And you should also consider the circumstances. If you're trying to do an outdoor ceremony and you're trying to hold a curl in your hair and it's humid and you're sweating at your hairline, you're not going to look your best. So maybe a contained updo of some sort or some more contained hairdo would be better than your dream view. Like, Bill's a talented photographer, but if your hair that you're wearing down is whipping in front of your face, he's not going to get your eyes at the moment you say I do.
Sure.
He can't do it. He can't even Photoshop that fix.
Right.
Like, that's not fixable. If you miss it in the moment, it's missed. So you should always consider, there's so many details in every aspect of planning your wedding.
And this all, you're right, and this all points to everything that you're doing. It's a culmination of thousands of things.
Thousands and thousands of things. And that just because it looks good in a movie, it looks good in a jewelry store commercial.
Oh, there's a commercial where there's a bride about to walk down the aisle, and she's in like the vestibule of the church. I don't know if it's an insurance company. I don't know if you've seen it, but there are obviously very large scrims and studio lights set up, and I have never, in shooting weddings for 12 years, have seen a vestibule in a church that had such perfect, magnificent, and perfectly white balanced. And when I say that, I mean, when you're standing near a window, you've got cool light, and then there's artificial lights inside that are orange, and it can do all kinds of crazy things to your skin and your dress. But you make a very valid point that if you see something, whether it's a movie, a television show, or all these things, it is impossible to have a Hollywood production crew on your wedding day.
Correct. And in this particular circumstances, I'm going to, with my experience as event planner, predict that the dramatic moment where you open the door to the house of worship and then the bride is backlit and completely washed out, you can't get that shot.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't get that shot. Like, that could be your dream shot, but you just can't get it because you open the door and all you see is like a silhouette and a blinding thing of light. You get no detail of the look on her face, his face, their face.
Yeah.
And that's just, a circumstance. Like the alternative is to drop a Hollywood production on your wedding and control every element,
Correct.
which means you have the grips, the best boys, the production assistants, like
and you might have to do 7 takes of walking down the aisle.
Yeah, and so I wanted to mention this point in this conversation is that social media is a lie.
Yeah.
All of it is a lie. All of it is a second of truth out of context. Everything is a second of truth out of context, but all of it is a lie.
This reminds me that this year one of my things is I want to get more BTS, behind the scenes, out to people, because if couples saw what was right off camera or what was happening at the same time when I took a picture, they would have more perspective and realize what you're saying. It's everything on social media is this fraction of a second without context, and without being there, without some kind of behind the scenes, it's really hard to know what was happening or not. So one more topic before we finish, and of course we saved the best for last, photography, which you were mentioning earlier, and video, but from a planner standpoint, what's the best advice that you would give to couples, or what guidance do you give couples when they're looking for their photo and video team?
The most essential piece of advice I could say about this is, and maybe this is a little bit more with your still photographer than your videographer, but that person is going to be in your personal space at a very emotional time for a very long day. You must hire someone that you click with on a human level.
Yes, very important.
Their portfolio means, I don't want to say it means nothing, but they photograph someone else on a different day in a different circumstance. They cannot duplicate any of the shots that are in their portfolio with different people, different days, different circumstances. And the rapport you have with this person or team of people shows up on your face.
Yeah, certainly.
No matter what. Like it shows up on, maybe if you are a professional model, you have the skills to manage that. But if you're not a professional model, your human interaction with that photographer, or your comfort with that photographer while you're having a human interactive moment with your partner, is absolutely essential.
Yeah, and even if someone is a model, that only means that they can hide it visually.
Correct.
But when
they have the skills, to produce the lie.
A model is going to get married someday, and, and when they hire a photographer, even if it's a perfect picture, if they're very mellow, relaxed people, and they have a very energetic, high-strung photographer, they can look at the pictures and just think, I just felt rushed. It just didn't. We didn't click, like you were saying, or vice versa. Some people are super high energy, and if someone is just kind of mellow and is a church mouse, it's just not going to fit with their energy.
It depends. It depends on how it fits.
Yeah.
I don't want to say you have to hire someone similar to you. It has to be how you fit. A high energy photographer can bring a more reticent couple out of a shell.
That's actually a very valid point too.
And bring it, or a more chill photographer can take the edge off of someone in the midst of an anxiety attack and produce a better image in the end.
Yeah.
And so it's more about how you click. The way Bill and I encountered ourselves is I was hired to plan an event, a wedding, and my client had me brief that I had to suggest 3 or more photographers. And I put Bill on that list. We interviewed with all 3 wonderful, talented, experienced, dedicated photographers, and Bill landed the job because Bill and his lovely dog Tika
she's my closer,
clicked with this client instantly.
And I will say, Mark might have recommended that I bring my dog to the Zoom session, and I listened to that, and I now bring my dog to my Zoom sessions, and if for no other reason, it just makes people comfortable. It's a topic of conversation, and it can help people click.
She's very cute, and she is the boss.
She is the boss. She's actually in charge of me, and I am here because of her, and she's sitting across the table, and she's been eyeing me down the whole time, making sure I do a good job, because Mark is my first person that I'm interviewing on my podcast. Every other time I was just talking to myself. So hopefully I do a good enough job for her. And one final thing. I just want to ask, is there anything you're looking forward to this year, whether it's an event or completely outside of work? What is Marc looking forward to in the year of Mocha Mousse? That Pantone is bringing us. It's the color of the year. Mocha Mousse. It's brown.
Well, first of all, I never pay attention. Not saying brown is bad,
but it sounds so much better when it's Mocha Mousse.
I never pay attention to what the color of the year is. I pay attention to what the color of my client is.
Yes.
And I don't mean their racial color. I mean the color that evokes their mood and like.
Yeah. But what are you looking forward to this year? It could be work or non-work.
I'm going to say I'm looking forward to, in this age, getting back either in my personal life or in my professional life and helping my clients in their professional life get back to the human interactions of all of this stuff. Yeah. Your wedding does not happen on Instagram. Your wedding does not happen on Facebook. It does not happen on TikTok. It does not happen on, I'm old, I might be missing other sites. And the whole purpose of this, the whole purpose of sending an invitation, of inviting people to share this special moment with you, is that you're sharing it with a human being that you have commonality with. It's a building block for more commonality. It's a building block for a deeper, nuanced relationship with the people that we occupy this planet with. It's an opportunity to be creative and find things in you that you never thought you would. It's an opportunity to problem solve with the person you intend to spend the rest of your life with. It's an opportunity to present the new unit to your public, and I don't mean by posting it on Instagram so that the unknown millions of people can see it, but that your people can participate in this and anticipate other moments with you. And every element that you do, I think, and I'm looking forward to being back to, what does this mean to me personally? What does this mean to this group of people I'm assembling? How does this improve our relationship? How does this make us closer, make us appreciate each other more, make us have more kindness for everybody around us?
Yeah, I like the last thing you said there, kindness for sure. Well, I want to thank you, Marc, so much for coming on to I'll Be There For You. And
I'm glad Tika let you out to do this today.
I'm glad she did too, and hopefully she approved of this entire episode. And I'd be happy to have you back again. And to everyone listening, thank you so much. Marc, you want to let people know how to contact you or find you if you're interested?
You can find me and direct contact me through Facebook, Instagram. It's my name, Marc, M-A-R-C, Uravic, U-R-A, V as in Victor, I-C. I am a very boutique, very niche planner. I, like our shared client has said, I will set the whole place on fire to get my clients what they want.
To get it done.
Because that's how much I value, but my business is not mass market.
Yeah, sounds good.
It's human moments created by human people, and there's only so many of that I can do in any one year. So I'm not out there on every venue.
Sure.
Trying to drum up business. It's all kind of who wants to take this journey with me? And I'm happy to talk to anybody and explore ways to make this a special time in your life.
Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you again, Marc, and thank you for tuning in, everyone, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.